Thank you so much. I'm really excited. It's a pleasure to have you here to be able to have this conversation with you. Very
Thank
excited.
you. Same here.
Yeah, and I guess welcome to the 19th edition of Solution Illuminators series podcast. Let's start the conversation.
Let's do it.
Yes, a comedian once said, "We all think about crazy things, but some of us don't carry it out, while some others do. And these people that carried it out, we consider them to have to need mental care because they carry out certain things they're not supposed to carry out, right? And I guess that's why on Facebook, when you join Facebook, you'll see that they'll ask what's on your mind because they want to know what's on people's mind. Maybe that's a way to discover whether somebody needs attention, somebody is thinking about criminal situations, or they actually want to commit suicide. And that's why we're talking about suicide prevention today because it's very important. It starts from the mind. So my first question to you is, how do you identify that someone can benefit from mental care?
Well, we all can benefit from mental care. When you were telling your story, you know, crazy is very relative. I mean, what does crazy means? And I think one of the reasons why many people do not reach out or talk about what's in their mind is because sometimes we have these stigma or stereotypes attached to talking about things. We can all benefit from mental care the same way we benefit from physical care. Mental health is health, same as going to your doctor for checkups. But again, for some reason, years go by and we still have this belief that mental care is only for people who are in crisis, or people, if we're going to use that word again that I don't love, is for people who are crazy. And it's not true. Um, mental health care can mean to obtain tools to live a better life. It could help to identify your potential, to deal with the daily stresses of life, to find out different ways of doing things in your life, or sometimes even to have a space, a safe space with somebody trained to speak about what's in your mind, which it can be so healing for many, because usually don't have that space, especially now where we live in a society where we're rushing and we're busy and we barely have time to listen to each other. And when we think we're listening to each other, we might not. We're just giving each other's advice and trying to bring solutions to each other's lives. When in reality, listening is having to that space to hear yourself out loud and find different perspectives and ways of how you want to live your life. So, long answer, we all can benefit from mental health care, every single human being.
Wow, wow, exciting. I think the big thing is that we always stigmatize it and label people, oh, I'm better than this person. And if you need that, you need it because you have a problem, and I don't have a problem, that kind of a thing, which is where the stigmatization is really bad. And we have to talk about it. One of the things that I also found very interesting searching through your profile is you mentioned the talk therapy. And you just mentioned that it's not about providing solution to the person, but having the opportunity to listen to the person. I think a lot of people just want to be heard. So how does the talk therapy works? Can you say something about that?
Yeah, talk therapy is basically therapy. It's another way to call just therapy as people know it. But again, it's a safe space because the information is confidential. It's different than talking to a friend or a family member. There's a reason where they're professionals trained and prepared to do this, but it's a space where you can talk about your life. And in my case, one of the main things that therapy has helped me through the years is to listen to myself and get to know myself better. And sometimes with good questions that therapists are trained to ask, it can bring insight into how you behave, into what are the things that you think more often. And many times is how to change those thoughts to then bring different emotions and different behaviors in your life. So why not? I mean, you are the person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with 24/7. Why not developing a better relationship with yourself and get to know yourself even better? We want to get to know people when we get married to them. It's like, get to know the person very well. You're going to spend the rest of your life. I agree. Let's do that. But you're also spending the rest of your life with yourself. So spend some time having that intimate and close relationship with you, and it can bring really good changes to whatever you want to do, I
Wow,
think.
wow, wow. Well, thank you so much. It's very important. We know that getting to know ourselves is it's something that we should explore. One of the things that I also find very interesting, searching through your profile, is the fact you emphasize the fact that it's important to have conversations that will make somebody think about what they will not think about on a good day. That having such conversations. So, can you share one of those experiences that you have whereby you sat down with a client and you were able to help them to think about something that they probably would never have thought about?
Yeah, and I think, I mean, one example of having those conversations is exactly suicide prevention. I think my passion for that came after working in an emergency room for these many years, is to realize that thinking about suicide is way more common than we think. The difference is that people don't go out and say, "Hey, I want to talk to you because I'm thinking about suicide." So opening those conversations, and what I've learned through the years in the emergency room is that having those conversations sometimes can be the one of the most effective prevention tools for somebody to end up killing themselves. Is opening that conversation, is showing that you are a person that can have that conversation, offer empathetic listening, and sometimes it's even enough to be able to talk about it and let it out of your chest. So, opening conversations not only about suicide but about mental health in general is key. My mission is to talk about it as openly as like we were discussing what toppings to put on our pizza. It should be that casual, because we live with our mental health all the time. We all have it. We all have mental health, and we all at some point have ups and downs in that continuum called mental health. It's not black or white, right? Just because you have a mental health disorder doesn't mean you have mental health, and just because you don't have a mental health disorder doesn't mean you have good mental health. It's really a line, right? And we move back and forth on that continuum. So it's conversations that are important, and more now than ever. We do know that after COVID, numbers have rise in terms of people needing mental health care, people thinking about suicide, people attempting suicide, people struggling with their emotions. So why are we not talking more about something that is way more common than, and I'm going to say it, way more common than active shooters, hurricanes, all these things that we drill for, that we prepare for, and are not as common as what's really affecting most people, which is mental health issues.
Wow, interesting. It's very interesting that you mentioned active shooter situation. And one of the interesting thing that I have observed is that there's a couple of situations whereby people have linked mental health to the active shooter situation. And so this person was able to do this because they needed mental health help at some point and they didn't get the mental help that they needed.
Well,
Which
in
will
some,
go ahead, sorry.
no, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. You want to say something?
No, I think in some cases that might be accurate. In other cases, it is not. In mental health, I mean, let's start by the very important point that one of the stigma that we have, or one belief that we have that is not based on evidence, is that mental health disorders bring violence. And that is not accurate. In fact, people with mental health disorders are usually more often the victims of violence than the violent themselves. But sometimes, we human beings, we need an answer. It's easier when we have an explanation for things, and then it's easy to say this person did it because this person was struggling with a mental health disorder, and that's when they ended up doing what. Well, there's so many variables to it that we cannot just hang on that. And in many cases, it has nothing to do with a mental health disorder. Rage, having a lot of anger or revenge or those kind of things have to do with your emotional health. Yes, but it's not a mental health disorder on itself necessarily. So again, yes and no. Many cases could be related to that, and many are not.
Yes, yes. So one of the demarcation, or one of the line that defines the difference that I find out is the ERPO law, the ERPO law.
Mhm.
That is the Extreme Risk Protection Order law. What does that mean, and how does that affect your practice as a counselor?
I love that you're asking me that. You're the first one that have ever asked me that, and I appreciate it because it's a very important law, but it's kind of new and people don't know much about it. But basically, it's like a protective order or a restriction order for somebody who has weapons, firearms in their house. So, if you, for example, you hear somebody threaten with homicide or killing somebody else or threaten with suicide, and you know that they have firearms in their house, you are able to call authorities and inform them, and they're able to remove those firearms from the home for a certain period of time. There's different levels. It can be for a few days up to a year. A judge will determine that the length of time. But what this does is to prevent somebody who is at risk of becoming unsafe to themselves or somebody else to not have the means accessible, in this case, fire, firearms at the home. So I mean, it's a law that I support. I mean, I see it a lot in the emergency room, and in many cases, it has saved lives because the means are there, very handy and easy, and it's definitely part of prevention when it comes to suicide, homicide, or any other unsafe situations related to firearms.
Yes, yes. I think it's a good law. I mean, that's where the discussion of gun control and where people get emotional. We don't want to go into things like that, but then we can all agree that such law is good for everybody's safety, right? If
Mhm,
somebody cannot handle their emotion, why should they have a gun? I think we can all
mhm.
agree that something should be done about it. Which
And
will,
again, this is returned. So it has nothing to do with the rights to carry a gun. It has to do with carrying them for a specific period of time. Again, it can be just a week and they return them after a week, but it's to minimize the risk of the situation in that moment, right?
okay. So
Yeah.
when are they able to go back and take their guns? What do they have to do some examinations or?
Yeah, the judge will order an evaluation, and then the judge will decide, depending on the severity of the situation, when this person can get their firearm back. So it's a legal decision based on the well-being of the person at that moment, and probably the opinion of the professionals treating the person. But again, it's just to not make it accessible for a short period of time while the emergency is taken care of.
Yeah, good, good. I think it's a good law that can save
Mhm.
lives if taken seriously. So,
Mhm.
still talking about things that I observe within neighborhood, the way we live our lives, and also we can from there talk about lifestyle and diet. So, I know you're involved with a podcast that talks about training and diet and things like that. So, based on your discussion on your podcast and what you've learned, how does lifestyle and diet impact mental health?
Well, and I would love for my co-host in the podcast to be the one here because that's her area. But the little bit that I would feel comfortable sharing from my perspective is that it does have an impact. Absolutely. There's research out there that shows that different kind of nutrients could help with depression or anxiety. I'm not I mean, I don't have a lot of information about that, but I also know, which is something that we cover in our podcast, is that also the anxiety of what are we eating, all these messages about the diets and losing weight, and otherwise you're not going to be able to be healthy or do this or that. Even already that diet culture hustle, the hustle of having to perform to a certain standard that is not even based on research, really, because if there was a diet that would work, we would maybe be using, I mean, like, what is it really for? It creates a lot of anxiety. We're constantly and daily bombarded with messages of all these things that we need to do to have the perfect life. Well, no, I mean, no, there's so many variables to that, and you're unique on what you need and what you want. So something that we want to do in that podcast is actually inform people to stay away from that culture of you have to do these specific things, even not only in diet but in mental health. If you do this, then you're going to be happy, or these are the 5 steps to feel emotionally great. Well, right. Already that brings a lot of anxiety, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so now that you went to that area talking about recommendations that are probably not so good or that they are not so clear. And one of the things that we can talk about that is very close to that is substance abuse. People using substances, and what are the substance abuse prevention or treatment programs that are available to people for people who probably don't know that they're actually doing that and they find themselves in the middle of that and they want to get back on track? What are the resources available and how can they, what do you recommend?
There's a lot of resources. Thankfully, the United States is a place that has a lot of resources. Um, I mean, the first step is to realize, and probably one of the hardest steps is to realize that maybe we do have a problem. If the use of substances is interfering with your personal relationships or with carrying daily activities, or is this causing distress not only on you, but maybe distress on people around you, and you're starting to feel that you're not able to, again, to complete things that have to do with work or daily activities or your productivity, if it's affecting that, then it's a problem. Not only drugs, it could be your emotions too. That's the main difference between mental health and mental illness, is how much the symptoms are affecting your day-to-day functioning and how much distress are they causing. Those two, what we call the 2Ds, right, is well, three actually. It could be dysfunction, distress, and danger. So if your use of substances is putting you in danger or at risk behaviors or creating dysfunction, meaning again, interfering with your daily activities and what you used to do, and causing distress, either to yourself, psychological distress, right? Being uncomfortable, either to you or people around you, those are good signs that it might be time to do something. And the ways to get help can be to reach out for that talk therapy we were talking about. There's plenty of substance use outpatient and inpatient resources all over the United States. So it's reach out to dig a little deeper and get professional help. There are people trained out there to help exactly with those situations, and it can be very successful. It can bring a big change to people's lives.
Good, good, good. So it's important they get help and they try to reach out. But for some people they don't have the resources to get such help because they have limited money or they don't have money at all. Based on your experiences as a counselor, what are the channels? What are the what opportunities for such people who don't have the money? Are they just going to be on the street? What can they do?
So, fortunately, there are resources at no cost. The trick is to find them, right? So one way, in the United States, most counties have what we call a crisis response team, or sometimes they have like resource lines that you can call, and depending on your situation, not only financial, but it could be logistic as transportation or where you're located, they can help people find resources, according to their financial abilities, right? So this country does have that. A website, for example, like SAMHSA, substance abuse, and I terrible, I not remember exactly what it's for. But substance abuse, mental health association, something like that. I'm sorry, SAMHSA, I should know this, but that website can have a lot of resources. So SA um, HMA. No, what am I doing? SAHMSA? Let's look. Okay, but that website, well, I'll look it up so we don't need give bad information. Have a lot of resources at different levels, right? Resources that are, yeah, so SAMHSA. They have a national helpline. They have resources that, for depending on the state and people's location. So there are ways to find this help. Many counties have mental health clinics that are at no cost to their residents. So it really just takes a time to find them, but they are there. The biggest barrier is that sometimes we minimize what's going on in our lives and we don't reach out for that help. That's the biggest barrier, more than the financial, even though it's a barrier as well. I'm not saying it's not. Is realizing that we can take that next step and then really invest effort and time in going through treatment. But resources are there.
Yeah, good, good. It's very important we talk about the barriers to reaching out that you just mentioned now. And based on experiences that I have and I've seen people have, one of the experiences is grief, whereby there's a death in the family and somebody's grieving and things like that. Based on your experience, what's your recommendation for people like that to grieve without having emotional breakdown or something? What's the recommendation?
Well, I mean, let's first say that grief is a expected and normal process if you're going through a loss, right? Like your body's responding to a change in your life that it's painful. Um, I think it would be the same recommendation with any other situation. If your symptoms of grief are interfering with your day to day life and is causing distress to the point that it's hard for you to do daily things, not, I mean, after a certain amount of time, right? Let's say 2 weeks, give yourself, some time to grieve and just want to be in bed and not go to work and call and say, I can't do it. I'm going through these emotions and they hurt and they're hard. That is okay. I mean, we expect that. But if there's a point when you feel that you are in that situation and it's hard to come out, why doing it alone? I mean, sometimes weekly therapy, 1 hour a week, can help you process the situation and little by little get out and go back, not to your previous self without the grief, because that might be some feelings that are going to be with you, but to learn how to live with those feelings and make them change as you grow in your emotions, to move on in the best way that you can. But that's the whole point. The whole point is that we do not have to go through anything that is hurting or uncomfortable, that has to do with our mind or our emotions or our behaviors, to go through that alone, when there are people out there that can help. Why would you, with anything really? If you have a couch at your house that you have to move from your living room to a truck outside and it's really heavy, why are you doing that alone? You wouldn't do that alone. You'll call the neighbor, a friend, to help you grab the other end of the couch and put it in the moving truck. You wouldn't do that? Because it would hurt your back. It would probably, the couch will roll down the front yard and then no couch. I don't know. You will find yourself in front of the truck pushing, and then hurting yourself. Kind of similar. Don't find that other person to help you carry your emotional couch. Or if it maybe it's not a couch, maybe that day is just a little chair. But that's okay. It has nothing to do with your ability to go through things. It has to do with using your resources, which is people around you who can help.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's very funny that you gave that example. We live in a world where people think that physical abuse is more dangerous than emotional abuse. Whereby if something is physical, carrying something, right? You just give example of carrying something, you need help. But then if it's emotional within you, you tend to feel you don't need help, right?
Right.
And that's the reason why you mentioned weekly therapy, right? You're saying somebody should talk to, you're recommending if somebody's in that situation, they can talk to a therapist weekly. Another person can say, well, I can deal with it by myself. I can pray at home. I can read my Bible. I can do the spiritual things or go exercise and things like that. So for people who are still skeptical about therapy, how can you encourage them to be more open-minded to therapy?
Well, when you were saying that, it came to mind something that I always say. If you have a broken leg or you were bleeding profusely because, let's say, carrying that couch, you fell down and, you cut your skin and you're bleeding, the first thing you do is call a doctor. And in many times, if the bleeding is profusely and you see the bone, broken, it's you run to an ER, right? You
Yes.
run to the emergency room. There is such a thing as emotional bleeding. And that's why there are emergency rooms like the one I work at that has mental health professionals. Emotional bleeding means somebody who's thinking about suicide, somebody who doesn't feel safe, somebody who is having a panic attack for the first time and they don't know what's going on, is somebody who goes through a drug overdose. Those are emotional or psychological bleeding. So the same way we take care of our physical health and we run to their urgent clinics and minute clinics and forget about bleeding. We have a cold and we're coughing and we go to these urgent clinics to get maybe some medication or get at least the reassurance that we're not dying from a cold. Same with mental health. I hope now here where I am, actually, they open an urgent clinic and it's one step closer to this ideal world I have in my mind, which is that we could have urgent walk-in clinics for mental health. Is that place where you go when you're feeling that you're bleeding a little bit, that the bone is a little not looking well, or that you're in a lot of pain. Then you go and get that reassurance as, yes, this is what happening, this is how we can help, or here's some medication to make you feel better for the next days until you see your regular provider. Mental health is health.
Period. Hmm. So it's you just mentioned something that that is very interesting just now, talking about cold, right? If you're cold, you go and see a doctor. But I want to say that that could also, the difference in culture can also impact that.
Oh
I give you
yeah.
an example. Coming from Nigeria, which is the country I come from, when you are cold, you still go to work. You cannot just call your boss and say, oh, I have cold, I'm under the weather. But when I came to America, I see that you can actually do that. You can say, oh, I'm cold, I'm under the weather. I'm like, you can do that. So part of this is cultural differences. So
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a second to comment on that. And also the fact that you speak two languages, you're bilingual. How has that cultural difference and also exposure to a different language helped and impact your career?
Okay, so I have two answers for you. One, let me go back to the cultural differences. Absolutely. I'm from a Hispanic culture, and in the Hispanic culture, usually going to a mental health professional is a no no, right? Again, you talk to your pastor or you deal with it alone, or if somebody's showing symptoms of a mental health is something that they can deal on their own, or maybe it's the cause or the product of something else, not the health of your mind, right? And so it's hard. I've seen it more and more, thankfully, Hispanic people reaching out for mental health. um, but that's happening mostly now, and I think people in this country, I don't know in other countries how more open we are now compared to before. And in terms of the two languages, I feel blessed and grateful. In fact, where I am, which is in Annapolis, there's only three of us where I live that are licensed and speak Spanish. So, and that doesn't mean that the need is not there. Humans are humans. It doesn't matter what they speak. We all are in need of some mental health support at some point. So it's been a blessing to be able to help people who first language is Spanish, especially also when they come to the emergency room, to be able to do these evaluations without an interpreter. My hat off for interpreters. Thank goodness we have them. But of course, it's always better to be able to see a provider in your own language, right? I always
Yes.
feel like if I go to China or Japan or another country that I don't speak the language at all, or Nigeria, and God forbid, and something happens to me and I end up in the hospital, wow, how difficult it will be for me to tell a provider what I'm going through if the person doesn't speak the language. I don't speak it either. We do it through an interpreter. That's lovely. But imagine I go to Nigeria and somebody speaks perfect Spanish. I'm like, oh, that can feel like the best moment ever. So I am grateful that I can provide that to Spanish speaking people here where I am, at least.
Yeah, I think it's a blessing to be able to speak other languages because once in a while, even in America, I meet people who will say, "Oh, I can speak no English, no English." Could be
Mhm,
from people from Spanish-speaking country or from African
mhm.
country and things like that. That's once in a while that happens.
Well,
So
you are bilingual too, so you
yes, I'm
have that
bilingual. I
blessing
speak
too.
Yoruba fluently.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
it's a blessing to be able to do that.
yes.
So you now that we're talking about some problems and going through your profile, I discovered you have this new program you called Emotional Fitness Studio. All right.
Yes.
That's one of the solutions that you're providing. Can you tell us about that and how people can be part of that?
Yes, I am so excited about that, Tolu, and I just can't hide it. It's an initiative that I am in love with already. So the idea is throughout 2024, there will be 24 in-person workshops where I am in the Annapolis area. I gather 17 speakers that I trust, all in the wellness field. And about once, twice, or sometimes 3 times a month, we're going to provide these workshops at only $10 per event. So there's many goals behind this. One is to, first of all, to share tools and strategies with people at at an affordable price, right? Which is only $10. Two, for people in my community to be exposed to different providers in the community, right? And know that they're there, establish a relationship, or at least get to know them and some connection that day. And then each topic is different. Talking about grief, we're going to have a workshop on grief. We're going to have a workshop on alternative ways to emotional well-being with a doctor in Chinese medicine and acupuncture. We're going to have 2 Zumba classes because movement is proven to help with your emotional well-being, right? We start up with a yoga class. It's our first one now in January. So different topics that people can come and get tools from, meet providers in a safe, comfortable, and beautiful space that I found. So I'm really excited. I'm hoping people register and take advantage of it, and for this to start in 2024, but then we'll do 25 workshops in 2025, 26 in 2026. So hopefully that's what we'll do, with again the goal to, like I say in the marketing materials, to show that mental health doesn't have to be a tough nut to crack, that it can be accessible, affordable, and pleasant to learn skills that can help you live the life that you want to live.
Good, excellent, excellent. I think one of the things that we have in common is that we both from originated from another country, and here in this environment, they call us immigrants. And when I'm going through your services, I see that you have a service called Immigration Psychological Evaluation. What is that, and why is that important for somebody who's trying to immigrate?
So, in some processes, legal processes with immigration, sometimes it is a good support for the case to have a mental health evaluation. So what that means is, for example, people going through asylum processes to get asylum, or people who were victims of some kind of violence or abuse while in the United States. We have laws that offer these individuals the opportunity to get a visa or to get legal documents to remain in the United States. So these evaluations, what they do, my job is to interview the person and figure out if there were any effects on their mental health, and then use that as part of evidence of what they went through and how that can be used in the immigration case to support their situation. So it's usually for people going through any of those types of cases that would like that extra support for their case. So that goes together with the case they have with their lawyer, that goes to the court, and then the judge makes whatever decision the judge makes, right? But that's what it is. So yeah, it's for immigrants. In my case, for those who speak Spanish, usually I haven't had anybody that is not Spanish speaker yet, but that's my main population I help with that.
Yeah, so it can help support their case,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that is also very important, and you can comment on this, that when you talk to a patient, you also want to discuss with them from a motivation angle, and you're trying to convince them that their dreams, their thoughts are valid, and things like that. So how much of those kind of conversation do you have in terms of motivating a patient and telling them, oh, they're worthy of their dreams and things like that? Do you do that, or there's another person that does that?
I mean, yes. I mean, I think that's important. You call it motivation, and we call it motivation and validation. I mean, that's probably my day to day. One of my day to day tools is to let people know that what they're going through is okay. That bring hope. I think the main thing that we need as society is hope. So I would add motivation, validation, and hope that what we're going through has um, solution, that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, that hope is always available, that I mean, I really believe that every single human being, it's a fact, we're all so worth it, of feeling better, of doing better. Sometimes it's just not finding the right resources, or not having that motivation, or thinking that there's nothing else they can do. And I really think that there's nothing worse, probably. Well, I don't know if nothing worse, but something really, really important to prevent is hopelessness. That can take us to so many places that we don't want to be. So hopelessness and helplessness are two things that I try to support the best I can. Maybe because of my work at the emergency room, I see a lot of that. And you see a lot of that with people who attempt suicide. There's a lot of hopelessness and helplessness. And sometimes it's an idea. It's something that they believe at the moment, not necessarily based on evidence, because there are eh, again resources to help with situations like this. But sometimes we feel there's not. We feel we're alone, we're not worth it, we're at the end of things. But again, feeling better is absolutely possible. So do I use it on a daily basis? I use it with myself. Are you kidding me? Let's talk about clients. I have to use it with myself. If you don't keep yourself motivated the best you can, validating and giving yourself grace when you go through hard times, and say, you know what, today I feel like I can't do anything, instead of thinking, come on, Maria, you're not going to be productive today, you have to work on your stuff, you're going to waste your day. No, you give yourself grace, and then give yourself hope. Try to reach out again, to not carry that couch alone, but say, there's the hope that somebody might help me with that couch, and the hope that the couch will make it to the moving truck, and then maybe make it to whatever. But if the couch doesn't make it, okay, right? You give yourself grace, and you keep finding ways to support yourself. So yeah, the long answer, the short answer is yes. I try
Yes.
to use it as
Yes.
much as possible.
So it's important we talk about validation. You just mentioned that. I think that's also part of the game. When someone is in a supportive environment where there's care, there's love, and they tend to not find themselves in these kind of situations, and which I really want to learn a little bit about Venezuela culture. That's where you come from. So what's the culture there? Is it normal to receive validation from friends and family growing up, or was it different? How do you compare it to now?
That's a great question. I love that question. So I don't know about other countries. So obviously, I can only talk about me and my growing up in a Latin Venezuelan family. Everyone is in everybody's business, right? Like there's no privacy there. It's if you're going through something, the whole family knows about it and has an opinion about it. So I don't know how much about validation because we just, but I'll tell you this, it bothered me when, it bothered me kind of when I lived in Venezuela, but then when I moved to the United States and I realized how lonely I was and how my family really represented a village for me, that's when it hit me that, oh my goodness, having these social connections and being with people that care about me, want the best for me, are rooting for me is a game changer. And that's when I realized, because I've been here for 22 years with no family here. They come visit every now and then, but it was probably the hardest thing for me to come into another country has been that the being away from my birth family and not having that support here in person with me. um that's when you realize, and it's supported by research, it's not just my experience, social connections, good ones, healthy ones, positive ones, is such an important thing to have to promote your emotional well-being. And it doesn't have to be family. In my case, I had to create my own family here, right? Because they're not here. So I had to find friends, co-workers, people that you choose, that you pick and choose because they are good for you, right? So you create your own village. And I learned that here in the US, when people say, oh, it takes a village, it takes a village. Oh, heck, it takes a village. That is absolutely true. So you have to find your village, because if you don't have a village, or you are surrounded with people that constantly bring you down or make you feel like crap, or don't feel, every time you say you want to do something, they bring your those dreams down and they burst the bubble for you, and is absolutely going to have an effect on your emotional well-being, 100% sure. So ditch those people gradually or not, set your boundaries, and find your true village, the real one. And that, for me, I mean, I still miss my family, don't get me wrong, but um I opted for developing that village. And thank goodness, if there's any friend of mine listening to this, I want to say I love you forever. And you're so important in my life, because that is key.
Yes, yes, that's key. Engaging in such conversation and picking your people, your village, people that are there to support you, not people that will bring you down. It's very important. And part of getting to such conversation is being vulnerable to the person. You have to say things that you probably will not say to someone on the street. So being based on your experience talking to anyone, your friends, family, and maybe clients, that's even more important because your clients probably don't have to say anything. But then for you to help them, they probably have to say certain things that they don't really want to say. So what's the process with them doing that? You really have to force it out, or does it come naturally? And how does that affect their growth from there? How do they become better from being vulnerable? Do you find that people who are actually more vulnerable recover faster, or it has nothing to do with how much of vulnerability that is going on?
Well, I think it helps. I mean, if somebody's willing to come to therapy, it's important to understand that it's a process. And like I said earlier, you have to invest your time and effort, like anything else, right? If you want to bring changes in your life, you are going to experience new things or being open to experience new things. Um, I mean, the for some people, they are able to open up pretty soon. For others, it takes trust. That's why that connection with the therapist is very important. We call it, the rapport that you have with the therapist. And that's what it's okay to maybe try a therapist, 3, 4 sessions and realize it's not a good match. And that is okay. And then you go find another therapist. But I think the idea of therapy, of offering somebody who's trained in listening, good listening, the real listening, plus offering a safe space, plus offering the privacy of the information is usually a good combination for people to feel comfortable sharing about what they're going through. Um, Again, for some people it takes some time, for some people it doesn't, and for some people, if not opening up about your emotions at all still brings changes and it makes you feel better, nobody's going to force them to open up to talk about anything, right? That's an individual and respected decision. Usually opening up about your emotions help process different things, and then again finding those different perspectives to take a look at what you're going through. But um is not necessarily precisely needed. Some people might open up a little bit and still do the work themselves at home, thinking about it later on. Um, but vulnerability, super important, I think. I mean, in my case, it's being important because what you were saying, when you create that village, when you open up about things, you might be surprised of how many people around you are experiencing similar things, but we just don't talk to each other. And that's what happens with mental health is we sometimes we're raised with the idea that the how is it, I don't know how to say it in English, but it's like your dirty dishes are washed at home, like you
Mhm.
don't go out to talk about your things. I ditched that long time ago, and I talk about, if I feel comfortable with the person, I just open up. And what I found is that many people share similar experiences, that what I just did is opening the floor for them to talk to. And it doesn't have to be sometimes a long deep conversation. Sometimes just, again, getting out of your chest and putting it out there, and somebody being a witness of what you're going through and saying, wow, it makes sense. I can feel, I can see why you're feeling that way. Just that little interaction can change the world, because there's something that human beings really crave, which is to feel heard. Who does? I mean, maybe there's people out there that doesn't, and that's okay. But most likely, people crave to feel heard. They like to feel heard and appreciated. So I mean, already that short interaction can change lives. And I want to say, Tolu, for the sake of this interview that is focused on suicide prevention, that's another conversation that is important to have. Feel free to open conversations to other people about suicide and ask about suicide. You notice that somebody's, is not doing well, they're feeling down, they're not being themselves lately. You notice some changes, go ahead and ask, hey, Maria, are you okay? Are you thinking about suicide? And ask the question. Is not going to put the idea on anybody's head. They're not going to do it because you asked about it. In fact, it can prevent and open that conversation for somebody to say, yes, I am, or no, I am. And if they say yes, then as a team, you can look for that help. And if it's an emergency situation and the person thinking, yes, and I'm thinking about doing it now, I have feeling it for many years, for several weeks, and I don't find any help, it can be a 911 call, and the person can go to the nearest emergency room and get an evaluation. Or it could be a 988 call, which is now a 3-digit phone number, all available all over the United States for mental health related situations. So that one, talking about vulnerability and suicide prevention combined, I really don't want to end this interview without sharing. It is so important to ask directly without sugarcoating it, in the same tone as you were asking somebody, what did you have for breakfast? Ask each other, are you thinking about suicide? Yes, no, and then respond accordingly.
Wow, excellent, excellent. Normalizing this kind of conversation. So it's you mentioned appreciation, and one of the positive emotion that I think is very important for people who are going through such emotion is gratitude. And my question is, how much of that emotion of gratitude comes up during conversations with the clients? People that are having such problem, do they still have that mind of being grateful, or have they lost it? And how have you been able to use that to help them?
Well, it depends on where the person is. I mean, practicing gratitude sounds easier said than done, right? For some people, it's really hard to practice gratitude and be grateful for things. It depends on what they're going through in their lives, but also in their mindset. I was reading actually last night about how to go from a victim mindset to a survivor mindset to a thrive mindset. And it takes some process. And I mean, practicing gratitude is a tool that I'm always going to suggest and help my clients practice. As much as we can. Again, it's easier or harder for some people, but it can bring a change in mindset that can be beneficial for emotional well-being. And it doesn't have to be, sometimes what stops people is they think you have to be grateful for big things, like I'm great. No, sometimes you can be grateful for having a sweatshirt to wear in the cold weather. Is grateful that I was able to gather glasses and see a little better when I wear my eyeglasses. Is being grateful for having a voice that you can speak your mind. Is little, it can be grateful for having water, that I'm clean water that I can drink during this interview. And then it's a muscle that you exercise. Nobody goes to the gym and lift 40 weight lifts right off the bat. No, you go the first day and you start with maybe 2 pound weight, and then this is okay, and then you go back and you do the 5. Or same with any of these tools or any of these things that we can add to our lifestyles, is practice and flexing the muscle until your body gets used to it, and then you start coming easier.
Excellent, excellent. So this will be my last question for today. Your establishment, the Coaching Therapist LLC, suggests that you're probably going to be using a lot of questions when you discuss with clients, because as coach, you're supposed to ask questions and help people figure out things by themselves. You're just pushing them a little bit. So during your multiple sessions, can you give us an example of the kind of questions that you ask, or the kind of questions you can suggest our audience think about that can put them on the right track when they are
Sure.
alone? Yeah.
Sure. Um, yeah, the coaching therapist came because not only am I a licensed therapist, but I trained as a life coach, and learning about the power of good questions changed the way I work with clients. So I love that question. And there's so many questions we can be asking ourselves to bring clarity or to guide us in different directions, or to really get to know ourselves better and find out what we want to do. So, for example, there are several questions come to mind, but one, talking about gratitude, a question that I absolutely love asking my clients and myself is, one is, in your life right now, what's going well? Because we are really good at finding what's not going well. We have a PhD on that. We have we don't need help there, right? But we can get some help in noticing the good. So that's one question. And another question, for example, is what keeps you going? What's something in your life that is important to you? What makes you wake up in the morning and do what you need to do? Right? That's a good one to figure out. Another one that I love, it has like, it could have like two parts, is one is, what would your 80-year-old self would say about how you're living your life right now? So
Mm.
that's one. Or what advice would your 80-year-old self give you right now? It's another way. Or you can do it the other way around. What would your 5-year-old or your 10-year-old self would tell you right now, right? And it's a good way to figure out what are the, thoughts and feelings that this person is having about themselves, or um there's so many more, and of course they're not coming to mind, but again, there's even people can Google it. If you want to Google powerful questions to ask yourself, get some of them and see which ones resonate, and start this journey of getting to know yourself better with good questions. I think it's worth it, worth
Wow.
to try.
Wow. Excellent. Excellent. Now we're gradually coming to the end of our session on suicide prevention on Solution Illuminator series. Now we want to thank our guest, Maria Winters, and you can give us your last thoughts for our guests. If there's anything you want to say to our guests, any programs you have, any encouragement you want to give, please go ahead and do that.
Thank you. Well, again, just let's open conversations about mental health. Let's ask each other more frequently, how are you really? Is there anything I can support you with? Are you thinking about suicide? Can I help you find professional help? Let's open those conversations as much as possible. You can learn more about me on my website, thecoachingtherapist.com. If you are in the Annapolis surrounding areas and would love to take advantage or join me on the Emotional Fitness Studio, all the sessions are on my website. You can register for only $10 per session. And the podcast Wellness Rebranded is another invitation if you want to connect and take a look of what we do there. And thank you, Tolu, for having me. It's been a
Yes.
pleasure talking to you. Hopefully we'll meet each other in person one day. So I'm very appreciative of this space that you have given me today.
Good, good, good. Thank you so much, Maria Winters. This session was very interesting and I learned so much. And I hope our viewers also learned something they can use to prevent suicide for themselves or for their loved ones. It's good we have this conversation so we don't hear another person killing themselves, and that's not good. We don't want that. So that's why we want to normalize conversations like this to help ourselves and also help our loved ones. Thank you for being here, Maria Winters, and I'll see you viewers next time. Bye.